Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to the Overanalyst podcast, your home for all things rambling discussion of gaming miscellanea. And today we invite you to open your ears, your minds, your hearts, and your wallets as we explore the recent controversy surrounding mishandling of funds and potential charity abuse tied to one of gaming YouTube's most beloved creators. Something we don't get into too often on this platform, like just what would typically be considered quote-unquote influencer drama, but all of us found significant and interesting enough to speak on. So really quickly, let's introduce our panel for the evening. Um, we have here Martina, or sephtheoverwitch,
Hello.
Mate, or Comrade Potato,
Hey yo.
and Martin, or eclipsesight.
Hello.
And I am Brady the Overanalyst. So glad you could join us today. As I alluded to literally 30 seconds ago, the focus of today's episode and kind of our analysis and speculation related to is the rather stunning revelations in the last weeks of 2023 that beloved gaming YouTube creator Gerard Khalil, better known as the completionist, who had run a number of very high-profile and long-lived gaming-related shows on the platform and amassed a huge following for his infectious positivity, enthusiasm, and passion for the medium, bereft of really any of the usual negativities one would associate with quote-unquote gamers TM, was involved in the mishandling of funds related to a very high-profile charity drive for Alzheimer's research and general dementia research. That over the period of roughly a decade, he and in all likelihood, his family were probably involved in some less than accurate reporting of that charity drive's income and where it stored and transmitted its money and what have you. And that he had very plainly lied to his audience for years about where this money was going, when in fact it had not made its way into the hands of any research firms or individual practitioners. Now, this is a story that is very serious because it surrounds potentially criminal allegations and conduct. And I want to preface this episode with a simple statement that none of us are legal experts. None of us have access to the entirety of the relevant documents. And as a result, everything we are going to say is going to be based on an analysis of publicly available information and inferences and speculation related to the same. In other words, we are not saying definitively that anybody did anything criminal. Legally speaking, we cannot, but what we can do is present you with the perspectives of four people who have been exposed to a lot of the information that's currently circulating and what we think is or isn't likely. As Gerard himself would tell you very angrily while snarling into a camera, we are not legal experts and are basing this entirely off of the information we've been exposed to. Before we get started, before we kind of dig in, because I want to give some background on the completionist network itself. Does anybody have any foundational information apart from that you think people absolutely need to know or should know, or maybe even want to discuss why we care enough to talk about this?
Maybe just one thing that I wanted to mention beforehand is that there was a lot of people who came in the defense of the completionist and the Open Hand Foundation, stating that, well, they didn't steal anything because they never spent it. They just kept it there. So to that, I say well, then people that rob a bank, are they really criminals if they don't spend that money but just keep it at home? So
well, exactly. And this is something else that's important for our audience to know. What makes this case so tricky and why we can't just come out here very plainly and say, hey guys, the angry hamburger man from YouTube, he was using funds from charity to buy $25,000 worth of Nintendo eShop games, is because as far as we can tell, that didn't happen. We're going to get into the specifics later on, but as Seth just said, the core accusation here is fundamentally that a massive amount of funds raised through several different charity events that were professed many times very publicly to have been donated to charities across roughly a decade never were, and that money remained intact in the charity's account, just sitting and rotting and collecting dust. And for those of you who may think that maybe they were leeching off of interest from those donations, as far as I'm aware, the very specific type of account that the funds were stored in did not accumulate interest. So we're going to get more into potential motives or why this would happen later on, but suffice to say, this is a very, very strange case of financial misdeeds.
Yeah,
And the fact that the money was there for 10 years mean it actually lost a lot in value due to inflation.
Yes, of course. But no individual dollar bills, as far as we can tell, disappeared, which is very strange, though a great number of them probably weren't reported accurately. If you've ever wanted to listen to four people, none of whom have a background in finance, discuss financial law, this is your podcast. Hi, welcome. So just quick background. If you're listening to this podcast, odds are pretty good you enjoy and care about video games as a medium, as an art form, or as a pastime. And if you do, you've probably been exposed to the works of a great number of creators online, live streamers, video essayists, reviewers, old school, highly edited Let's Players, my personal favorite, who also work with and talk about video games. And the focus of today's episode, Mr. Gerard Khalil, is just one such individual who has enjoyed a very substantial and, generally speaking, really well-received presence on YouTube and Twitch over the course of the better part of a decade now. He is someone who I think everybody here has watched at some point or another to some extent, and who I was actually a pretty big fan of. He tried to break into online content creation with a bunch of different video formats very early on, but I want to say it was about 10 years ago, give or take, where he launched a program simply called The Completionist that featured him and his then best friend Greg Wilmot reviewing and riffing on video games from the perspective of a player who strives to complete every appreciably distinct piece of content they entail. So if that means playing a game 3 times on increasingly difficult modes in order to say you cleared every unlockable mode, like in a Devil May Cry game, he would do it. If it meant collecting every Korok seed in Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild because they're there and you can collect them, he would do it. If it meant getting every achievement or trophy in a game, even if several of them don't have in-game rewards, he would do it, with the intent of showing you what this rather unorthodox approach to playing video games looks like and how it may be different from a more casual playthrough that you and I would do, and also to illustrate how much actual content is in these games. And if you didn't see the early completionist episodes, which you cannot because the first 100 and some odd were removed, at Mr. Wilmot's request, following a falling out over both creative and financial matters, as I understand it, between him and Gerard, they hit this really nice balance between Greg offering what I wouldn't call particularly funny, but definitely endearing, jokes and commentary off the cuff, and Gerard presenting a more analytical review of the game and what his completionist playthrough was like. People were really drawn to this style of review because it typically, at least early on, went in greater depth than many other short-form review creators on YouTube would, and it was very personal, with each video explaining, again, early on, not what you'll find anymore, exactly what Gerard's playthrough was like, beat by beat, illustrating really significant or funny or difficult moments, and giving you an idea of what this exact playthrough that your review was based on actually was like. People found the series to be very well edited, generally pretty well written, and very, very endearing, as both Gerard and Greg had great on-screen chemistry, and both of them came across as very likable guys. In fact, this is probably the most important thing for you to know when we set up this discussion of Fallout. Gerard's entire online persona for the better part of a decade was based entirely around the generally very well supported assumption that he was an unusually kind and energetic and positive individual. Somebody like any of you out there trying his level best at his job every day and wanting to share his passion with something he loved, or for something he loved with the wider world. Okay? That's what the completionist built their entire brand on over the past 10 years. A positive, enthusiastic, deeply devoted host who was doing silly and excessive things for your benefit, reviewing these games every week. And it was a very successful formula that
Yeah.
eventually incorporated additional programs like a Let's Play series or several on a separate channel, regular Twitch streams, a small network of creators technically operating under the completionist's umbrella that brought in quite a bit of money. But all of that would come crashing down in, I want to say, November of 2023. But there's your background. If you want to know pure and simple why this is so significant, Gerard is someone whose public persona was typified by kindness, openness, empathy, and a complete and total lack of any of the prejudices or isms that tend to define more toxic gaming spaces online. In other words, he was a very good man. And for 10 years, you would hear very little to the contrary from people who met him at conventions, fan interactions, and what have you, which is why what we're about to get into is so shocking. Sorry, anybody want to take it from here?
I just wanted to say, I started watching The Completionist when I think was I in high school or just starting college, something like that. But it was a very, very long time ago. He still had, a very crappy camera and was doing basically everything on his own, almost no effects or anything. And I was always so inspired by him because he came across as the person that he's doing that because he loves it. He genuinely loves video games, and he knows that not everybody has money or time to play them to the extent that he does. So it's kind of like, I'm gonna do that so that you don't have to, type of thing. Especially when it comes to the completionist thing, because most often than not, it's not even the completionist an achievement in the game itself, but it's rather a criteria that he put on himself. Because let's say in The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, collecting all of the Korok seeds doesn't give you an achievement, but he did it anyways because they're there, they can be collected, so he's gonna collect them all.
Yeah, it's almost like a series based entirely around a love for video games and also the virtue of perseverance. Just can we grind our way to 100%? And the answer is always kind of, unless it's Persona 5, which people got really upset about.
Oh, yeah, because, Persona 5, as a base game, it's already super, super long, and it's just, pure masochism to go for 100% completion. But,
So what you're saying...
no. Bad Eclipse. But,
Back
Eclipse...
corner.
Yeah, Eclipse and Potato, when did you, start watching or watch The Completionist?
I actually didn't really watch him. An odd video here or there, but I'm not really big on watching someone complete 100% of some game or even just play it too much. I'd just rather play it myself.
I get that. For sure.
And then after I'm done, at least getting the platinum trophy or whatever, I never want to see that fucking game again.
Makes sense. And I'd actually never watched him. I didn't know who he was until all this came up, and I'm like, who's this guy?
Really?
Yeah.
Fascinating. Oh, right. One more little fact that some of our viewers may appreciate. It's not super relevant now because the network has largely gone the way of the dodo. But Gerard also got his start as a member of a video game content creator network called, I believe it was Normal Boots, that featured other such luminaries of the internet as John Jafari or John Tron, who torpedoed a massive chunk of his career, after he began very openly making extremely racist conspiracy theorist statements and defending them at length online.
He's someone I did watch. Jeez,
Yep,
guy.
and he is, for all intents and purposes, a supporter of white supremacist rhetoric, despite not being Caucasian himself, which, yeah. And Normal Boots also includes Jared Knobbenbauer, or Pro Jared, who torpedoed his online acclaim after very, very well-documented allegations of him having sexually charged or explicit conversations with fans, and also cheating on his wife, and or, depending on your account who you're listening to, compelling her into an open relationship. He was ultimately able to clear himself of charges that he had had sexually explicit conversations with minors online, which, that's great, fantastic, glad that that did not happen. But the fact that he was a very high profile kind of like sex creep online also destroyed a ton of his career. There's a couple more members of Normal Boots who seem perfectly fine. I think Did You Know Gaming is a member of their collective, and Peanut Butter Gamer is like the guy who makes all the Zelda videos and now just like eats food and makes videos on the old Arthur program. But this is a network that is kind of cursed. I would say also, like, I will not. This is just to give a sort of glimpse into what my final conclusion is going to be. You are going to have to try really, really hard to come up with somebody I would say is a worse person than JonTron online. But Gerard comes pretty close. He's not worse, but he comes close.
Yeah, like we are not comparing them to like those people that are like having sexual conversations with minors. Like those are in a category of their own, though. So just to make it clear.
Yes, no, of course. The point was like Pro Jared did not, but he did a lot of other scummy things. But yeah, JonTron, like actual like borderline white nationalist thing, I'd say that's worse. But this is still pretty scummy. So would anybody like to get into the specific allegations against Gerard and against his network? Because up to this point, up until maybe 2 months ago, he was broadly known as just one of the most positive and kind of, like you said, Seth, aspirational video game creators out there who loved games so much he had funded a massive annual marathon, a charity marathon, intended to highlight upcoming indie games and creators and get a spotlight on people who deserved it in the gaming space. So where does all this go south?
Anyone wants to start, or should I?
Go ahead.
Well, yeah, basically, the thing started when another YouTuber by the name of Carl Jobst released a video claiming that the Open Hand Foundation, which is basically the foundation behind, it's owned by Gerard and his father, if I remember correctly, or just his father. I'm not sure.
Gerard, I believe, is the director or a director, and his father, California businessman Charles Khalil, is for all intents and purposes the owner of the charity.
Yeah, so
I think Gerard was like the financial director or something.
Well, great. That makes it even
He directed
worse.
the finances somewhere.
Yeah.
Not exactly. Like he said, well, I didn't know what was going on.
I'm not sure if that is any better. Yeah.
No, that makes it worse.
Yeah, how can you not know what's going on?
As a financial director, yeah. But yeah, basically the video came out with a lot of allegations that basically the Open Hand Foundation never completely accurately declared all of the taxes for the money that they received for as donations, whether that is through the I think it's called the Indie World.
Indieland.
The Indieland, yeah. So the show that they're, as Brady mentioned, they're doing once a year to promote indie games and also collect money for Alzheimer's research. And also they were organizing, I think it was like a golf event or something like that.
The Open Hand Foundation has sponsored charity golf tournaments stretching back to, I think, what was it, 2013, 2014?
Something like that, yeah. So like about 10 years. So basically all of the amount of money that they collected from both of these events on a yearly basis, since about, I think it was 2019, or something around that time, was not declared properly, and the discrepancies started becoming bigger and bigger. I think culminating in 2021 as like the biggest discrepancy between what was presented to the public as the money collected versus what was actually declared towards the taxes, so for the IRS. So the allegation basically was that at best it was just tax trying to avoid taxes. At worst, it was a complete charity fraud.
Right, and it's worth noting that charity fraud, which is a very serious criminal offense in the United States, is something that presently, and correct me if I'm wrong, but based on what I've seen, like experts who've been investigating this matter say, based off of the financials alone, cannot be proven, if only because you would have a very hard time determining whether or not there was actual malice, or the Open Hand Foundation, as a charity run by complete amateurs, was really bad at bookkeeping. However, Gerard's public claims that his organization had donated, past tense, donated funds from that account, funds from previous marathons, funds from previous golf tournaments, to specific charities, even naming individual charities, research foundations, schools of medicine, and so on. Those false claims, presenting to the audience that their donation could also be used in a similar fashion based on this false track record, very well may constitute charity fraud, or at the very least, some criminal offense related to deception or mispresentation.
Yeah.
See, since like I don't think he explicitly ever said we donated. I think like his statements were, we're working with these and these, and like we're working with this research facility or whatever. Did he actually say we donated?
On one occasion, at least, he and or the Open Hand Foundation said something to the effect of, we are one of the main financial support partners of insert organization here. And they had never donated a red cent to them.
I mean, they could have maybe pulled an Amber Heard and say, like, we pledged to donate. But, yeah. So blast from the past, huh?
That I think that mentally hurt me.
Yeah, so the thing is, at first, when this entire shitstorm came out, at first I was like, okay, like, he is the face of all of it, so of the Indieland and of the entirety of this charity, like that is giving money towards Alzheimer research because of the situation that happened with his mother. So, you know, he was always mentioning that, and everybody that knew him knew about the entire situation ever since he started his YouTube journey, because he was very open about it. So he seemed like a genuine person. He seemed that he genuinely cares about it. And I'm not saying that he doesn't. So, like, even if this all comes out as a charity fraud, I still do think that he cares about the cause regardless.
So, for reference, for our audience members who may not know, the Open Hand Foundation was dedicated to Gerard's late mother, Karen Khalil, who he has always very consistently, and I believe sincerely, described as an incredible positive influence on him and his life, and someone who always engendered his love of video games, who suffered from a fairly aggressive form of dementia and passed away just, I want to say, a couple years after his program started on YouTube, right? Like,
yeah, pretty much.
I think
it was
he made
pretty early.
A very touching episode about Cave's story and how it, like, comforted him after his mom passed away.
Yeah.
But the thing is here, like, and I cannot confirm this because I've not seen all of the relevant videos, I've heard, and there, by the way, there's absolutely no chance that anything we just said is incorrect. Karen Khalil did suffer from that disease. She did tragically pass away fairly young of that disease. But Gerard has supposedly, in different videos, given different exact dates for her death.
Exactly, and that is one of the situations that is throwing more and more shade on his character, because he has been a public speaker for Alzheimer's research, for raising awareness. So not only did he speak, through Indieland and through the charity events about it, but he also had a TED Talk, if I remember correctly, or some type of like big presentation in front of people. And
like a more public-facing,
exactly.
serious presentation.
So not like for gamers by gamers type of thing, but more like towards general public. And it's worth mentioning that on all of those occasions, he would mention the exact timeline of when he found out, when they found out the diagnosis, and how long it took for his mother to pass away. And they're not the same dates.
No.
So they're very specific and they're very different.
I would also like to contribute to this something closely related. And this is something that kind of hurts to see, even more broadly. It's come to light that Gerard has lied prolifically and unquestionably about his past and about his entire career trajectory. Because, and this is something he talked about quite a lot in his early YouTube videos and managed to present as completely legitimate. He really heavily emphasized the role that video games had in not just enriching his life and distracting him when he was young, but also building a bond between him and his mother. That I believe. But also that he became a completionist because he tried to get every little bit of content out of every game he had, because his family, especially like him and his mom, didn't have too much money to go around, couldn't get him all that often. And I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, but I remember him saying something like his family would only like let him buy another game if he had totally completed ones he had gotten before.
Yeah, that's something that he mentioned pretty often.
That he grew up kind of economically disadvantaged, and video games were a way for him and his family to come together and get like a bit of escapism. That is not remotely true. Charles Khalil is a very successful businessman and business owner, and to the best of my knowledge, Gerard and his siblings, of whom there are many, several of which, or at least a couple of which are involved in the Open Hand Foundation, grew up, at the very least, upper middle class, if not fairly wealthy. Do I believe possibly that like Gerard and his mother and the rest of the siblings may have not had that much spending money because Charles may have kept a really hard fist around like the purse strings? Sure. But do I believe that he grew up poor? No, it's been proven that he did not.
Yeah, exactly. So, like, I do not doubt that he, like, it could be really that his parents were like, okay, you're not getting a new game until you completely beat this one. That can happen, but the reason was definitely not economic disadvantage.
No, he was not poor. He is not poor. He comes from a very privileged background. And that is something that, as far as I could tell, he never advertised or acknowledged, like, through his major forums, like, at all. While saying the exact opposite.
Exactly. I mean, you don't get pity points from the general public if you say that you come from a wealthy family or that you're well off or that you're a completely normal person, because everybody knows if you can kind of like sympathize with your general audience, you become more relatable and you get more views.
And this is something that, like, in the recent months, a lot of people have started digging deep into. I think he was able to pull it off in large part because none of the claims he made were like ridiculous, over-the-top, unbelievable claims. But Gerard has openly and repeatedly lied about very, very many things over his time online. Like, a lot.
But back to the topic about the Open Hand Foundation. So this topic did not really resolve itself, or like the discussion did not really stop for a long time. That is why we are now recording this in February. And that is mostly due to, of course, Gerard coming out, trying to defend himself against the allegations, which is something that every YouTuber does. You know the famous apology videos. At least he didn't get a ukulele, but he did
At least
spend.
he didn't even really apologize.
Yeah, he didn't apologize. He basically deflected and at the end attacked people that raised the allegations against him, calling them, not legal experts and saying that he's going to go legally against them. But during all of those, all of those minutes of him explaining stuff, he was staring at the camera so intently that he really came off as a very, very angry man. Like, I could
God,
not really
those-
watch him.
Those angry faces he kept flashing at the camera. Jesus Christ.
No, he looked like a baby, like getting ready to throw a tantrum. That's the exact expression he had, like the cheeks puffed up and like the corners of the mouth really sharply turned down, the brow furrowed.
Yeah,
Like,
and
I saw one of like a meme like with one of the most like egregious angry faces he made during that video, and the meme said like something along the lines of when the community makes you donate your retirement fund or something like that.
yeah, it's
I should mention, to the same point, they did donate the original amount of funds that were claimed to have been possessed by the Open Hand Foundation all at once in one gigantic lump sum a couple days after the allegations reached a boiling point.
Yeah.
Not counting the money that is not believed to have been reported accurately. Or that was consumed for like the costs of putting these events on and what have you.
Yeah.
But what bothers me about that is the reason at first Gerard and friends gave the wider world as to why they did not donate this money, which they acknowledged they did not donate this money for 10 years, is that, well, we were wanting to really thoroughly vet whatever organization we work with and make sure they weren't going to waste this money and all of it would go specifically to research, not to pay like student grants or whatever, not to pay like custodial staff, not to pay for building maintenance, just to research so it does the most good possible. A so-called directed donation that has to be in excess of a certain amount in order to allow the person or organization donating to specify what their funds are to be used for. Thing is, for most organizations, you can direct your donation with substantially less than like tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Yep.
Like,
and not only that, but at some point they were also claiming that they didn't donate it because they wanted to reach a certain amount of money.
Absurd.
Yeah, and then like donate everything into in one like in one go, which is like, okay, sure, but 10 years? Like, is that the amount of time?
Anyone?
Yeah, why didn't you say that? Also, at some point, if you go back to the indie lens, there would always be a sentence or two where he would say like every bit, every sub, every donation, everything is gonna go towards the Open Hand Foundation and towards the charity. But then afterwards, he did say, I'm not sure if that was in his like quote unquote apology video or if he said it in the interview he did with Carl Jobs and Murahar from Some Ordinary Gamers. But he did say that, a portion of the money went towards the production costs of Indieland, which is definitely not something that he made clear in those sentences where he said that everything is going to the charity, which to me as a viewer, then like when somebody says that to me, I would assume, okay, they took out of their own pockets to produce this show, this event, and everything that they get as money for, or in any way, shape or form throughout this event is going to the charity. Not that this charity is going to be funding this event and then the leftovers are going to get donated.
Yep. And also that they were donating to an organization that they believed had an established track record of successfully funding dementia research initiatives. Not one that had done nothing. Which
also,
is
can I just say something?
Yeah, go ahead.
There's a slight irony about them saying, "Oh, we're only going to donate to something that where the money is not going to hedge costs or building maintenance." Oh, but we're doing building maintenance and we're funding the organization. Like, do we see the problem here?
Yeah.
Do you guys did you notice when he said going forward, Indie Land will no longer have any charity aspect to it? And the way he
That
said it was
implies it did to begin with.
No, but like the way he said it was like, oh, we're no longer gonna have charities at Indie Land, and it's all your fault.
Yeah, that's pretty much also how it came across when he did that interview with Carl Jobst and Mutahar, because he said openly, like, yeah, we started looking into this and we basically donated the money, well, because of you guys, because of the pressure from you guys. So kind of implying, like, if they didn't, put pressure on, that money still would not have been donated.
Also,
I think that's pretty clear.
It's worth noting that in excerpts from this original interview that Mutahar and Carl had with Gerard, very openly in this long section of unedited audio, Gerard comes across as simultaneously he claims complete ignorance for any of the mishandling until 2022, but then went on in the next year's Indie Land, or that year's Indie Land, to say we've worked with this, we've worked with that, we're funding XYZ, and so on. But then he asks the two investigative journalists, and I'm paraphrasing here, these are not his exact words, but for all intents and purposes, so look, is there anything that I can do for you guys to make this go away? Is there, just tell me what to do, and I'll do it.
About that.
Or do I just need to take the L on this?
Yeah.
But he was also like, oh, this is gonna impact so many people and stuff like that.
I've got 20 mouths to feed, at least 3 or 4 of which are not mine.
Yeah, so the thing is that he was trying, to show this pity party, and then at some point he was saying like, oh yeah, we meant to not have the Indie Land have the charity aspect at all anyways, because this is 10-year anniversary of my mother's death, so that would be it. But in the last Indie Land, he kept referencing people and other events that would be happening next year. So he kept saying like, hey, XYZ, see you next year on Indie Land, hinting that there is going to be a next year Indie Land. But then afterwards claiming that oh yeah, it was always the intention for it to stop at 10 years. So yeah, a very...
My question is, now that this is out, obviously, a great number of the indie firms that he has promoted before are not going to want to work with him. So just imagine the next Indie Land, Robert Stellar Industries, fantastic. All of the best names in indie game development are here.
Oh God, yeah. But
I want it to be an event solely attended by scammers.
Yeah, there was this really good RPG that came out recently.
Alleged scammers. Scammers.
Yes.
We don't want to get sued.
So there was this really good RPG that came out recently called Sea of Stars, and it was known that Gerard was promoting that game quite a lot, because he loved it. The game is objectively very good. It's an indie game, and of course they in return created a character for him, designed it after him and named it after him. As soon as these allegations came out, there was a very, very fast patch that renamed that character and redesigned them. Yeah. So I think that more and more indie companies are going to start backing off and maybe just generally rethink about their approach to working with influencers, because they seem to come out as less and less genuine people. At least when you work with a company, there is the legal team and a little bit more of a vetting process. But with influencer, it's kind of like a gamble at this point.
And I'd also like to point out, as far as dependable, authentic influencers in our space go, Gerard was a big deal, because he wasn't just an indie promoter. He was a brand ambassador for Nintendo for several years, for all intents and purposes. He was one of the hosts of the short-lived revival of G4 Gaming News Network. he's hosted very large, officially sanctioned like fighting game tournaments alongside people like Lil Wayne and Susie Hunter, and like he's a big deal, and a very well connected one at that, in regards to like both indie developers and AAA corporations. And my guess is he's not gonna be able to sustain himself in the way he wishes without all of those like arteries of support to his network, because no company's gonna work with this guy now. No indie's gonna work with this guy now. His reputation is tarnished in part because, and I don't think we've made this point clear enough, friends. Go watch Gerard's quote-unquote apology titled My Response. It is so petulant and so vile in many ways that it actively makes him and his case look worse. He does not say, if you donated money to us and we didn't get it where you believed it was going on time, I apologize. He says, effectively, I'm sorry if you felt misled. Not, I'm sorry if you were misled. I'm sorry that we weren't clear enough regarding our intention. No, I'm sorry if you felt like we weren't perfectly honest. And also, screw the people who made us donate this, and you guys for getting on our ass. We are considering legal action, if necessary, against the people trying to, like, take down our business by, you know, producing these videos and what have you. He spends more time in what is a 20-plus minute video railing against the people who brought his misdeeds to light than he does trying to address, I'm not talking about just donors, but fans of his, very genuine and dedicated fans who might be hurt or might be disillusioned as a result of what's come out. Like, it's a bad look, it's a bad move business-wise, but it's also so petulant that it, in my mind, completely shattered any hope that, oh, he'd come out and try to make this right, or he'd try to regain his fan base's trust somehow. Like, no. He either doesn't care, or he cares more about defending the family and, like, their charity organization than his public-facing business. And that's a bad look.
Yeah, I mean they did try to silence Carl Jobs as soon as like that his first video came out, like threatening him legal action, which kind of makes me wonder if maybe a smaller YouTuber or a reporter or whatever that has less of like big friends in the YouTube community has already tried to like get him to, you know, comment on that.
Yeah.
And they managed to silence him. Because 10 years is a long time for it to just like, you know, go by unnoticed.
Yeah, and something some people have pointed out, and we have to keep in mind this is entirely in the realm of speculation, is that nowadays you'll hear like fans and other creators alike share not like damning smoking gun, but like, shall we say, more morally gray or troubling instances of interactions with Gerard where it seemed like, well, maybe he wasn't such a nice guy. Maybe he was more focused on people's subscriber count than talking to folks who really cared about him and his show and what have you. And it is strange to me that if his persona is a complete facade, which it might be, it might not be, the jury is still out. It is staggering that he was able to preserve it for 10 years without suppressing a lot of smaller stories from getting out.
Yep. That's kind of what I'm thinking.
Because he's very well connected. Like, yeah, he has a lot of subscribers. Yeah, he makes a lot of money. He's also, between him and his family, insanely well connected on the corporate side of things, in a way that a lot of content creators are not. So yeah, it's sad. It's awful.
Yeah,
I hate it.
I just took a look at the Social Blade, so it's this website where you can take a look at like how people's social media channels are doing, and it seems like even though like this entire controversy is like pretty horrible, he's not losing nearly as much viewers and subscribers as you would expect from, you know, things like that coming to light. Like, he is losing about 10K subscribers weekly since November-ish, more or less. But for a channel that is like 2 million subscribers, it's like not that big of a deal, to be honest.
But it has been very consistent.
But it's been consistent, yes. The thing that concerned me the most is that there is quite a lot of people on like social media coming out after he donated that chunk of money, being like, oh, well, now everything is fine. See, he donated it, so like back off. And the thing is like, no, first of all, he still did not donate the entirety of the money. He still didn't produce the paperwork that he needed to produce. He still didn't apologize to the people that he basically threatened on that video.
Not once.
Yeah, and he still didn't give a proper explanation of what the hell went wrong, because, you know, it's one thing to be like, oh, I didn't know about it, and now that I know, I'm gonna try to, you know, work on it. But the other thing is like to actively lying publicly about it. So, you know,
repeatedly, for a decade.
So it comes quite, you know, at first I was like, okay, it can be, you know, blissful ignorance, you know, like he maybe genuinely didn't know. But now I'm more leaning towards like malicious intent.
Now, this brings us to something I actually want you guys' opinion and input on, because it's something I've been wondering about ad infinitum. Right, okay. Let's say there is malicious intent here. Let's say this has been, and we are speculating here. We are not stating anything decisively. Lawyers. Let's say that the completionist personally is involved in some kind of malfeasance here. What I genuinely want to know, that you guys might be able to enlighten me about, is what in the world is the actual, like, incentive or profit motive here? Because, as we said, I'm pretty sure this account rakes in no interest. I'm pretty sure this account has not seen any money mysteriously vanish from it, aside from what was underreported. And Gerard's businesses, like, yeah, you have to understand, like, friends in the audience, YouTube does not make as much money as you think it does, and Gerard has, or had, not anymore, an absurdly large crew of like 20 people that helped him produce his videos. But even still, he would be making so much more money personally on every financial period than this charity did probably in year for year. Like, it's not even close. So why would he do this if it wasn't something his family was doing and he was just helping cover up?
Yeah, I mean, that's been my question the entire time. Like, what was the point?
It could always just be gross incompetence.
You'd think that, but that
people
doesn't
tend to
explain...
not try and cover up gross incompetence the same way.
Yeah, they just say, we fucked up, or our people really fucked up. We're so sorry, we won't do this again.
Like, they try and shift blame. They don't try and deny blame if it's gross incompetence.
Well, maybe he is grossly incompetent at denying or shifting blame.
Yeah. I do think that maybe the plan was to keep that money until like Indieland is finally finished, as in like not really doing the entire charity thing, and until people kind of forgot about it, because that's basically untaxable money at that point, so they can just put it in their pocket.
But if you divide it between Charles and Gerard and like 3 or 4 other Khalil kids, for the potential federal crimes such action would entail, that's not a lot of money over like a decade or more. It's really not.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to say. Like, the community of his supporters isn't his like biggest fear, or shouldn't be his biggest fear. It's the fucking IRS.
Yeah.
The United States' greatest weapon, the Internal Revenue Service.
One thing I do want to kind of say, Brady, to continue talking about, like, you talk about how his lying about his upbringing and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I've noticed this a lot, and especially with like maybe older generations. There was a massive, I don't want to say class gap, but like, you know, like where people in a certain class just don't understand what people below them are doing.
Yeah.
Like, they don't understand. It's like, oh, spy a house forehead, easy. Like, no, we can't. You know, like, just do this forehead. Oh, just go to the bank and get a loan forehead. It's like, no, that's not how it works.
No, not at all.
So it's just a complete class blindness.
Like maybe engendering a general lack of empathy for the audience. Yeah.
That goes up and down too. Like, people don't understand. There's been $1 million, $1 billion. Like, oh, they must have got that $1 billion legally. No, they didn't. There's a massive difference between $1 million and $1 billion. Like, $1 million, yeah, okay, you can maybe get that not legally, sorry, morally, but $1 billion?
ethically.
You've not got $1 billion without underpaying someone.
That's true. And I should note, on that note, and again, I'm making no legal claims here because there aren't really any to make based off of the facts I have. While Gerard has been the subject of intense controversy for the past couple of months, on a smaller scale or less publicly, his father has been the subject of some pretty intense criticism locally for a long time. Because he owns gas stations and other local businesses, as I understand, including the offices Gerard and his former army of editors and artists worked out of. And he was cited by journalists many, many times for basically price gouging, taking commodities like gas and other goods that only his stations controlled for this little stretch of like Los Angeles highway or interstate, and substantially increasing their prices beyond, what may have been ethical on the market at the time, because there was nowhere else to get it in that little area. So he's been like criticized for really scummy but legal business practices for quite some time. And based on all of the evidence and facts I have at hand, he is, unlike Gerard's public persona, unlike the other Khalil's public personae, he is a thoroughly unpleasant man. Like just really nasty to people, to family, to business partners, and so on. So if you wanted speculation as to what could be wrong with the Open Hand Foundation, I would advise you to look at him. Like, not Angry Hamburger Man.
Yeah.
At a certain point, people just want to make money a score, and that's a problem.
Yeah. And yeah, but like for the end, I wanted to ask you one question. What do you think he needs to do to make it right in the eyes of the public?
Mm.
I just realized that I accidentally muted us for the last 5 minutes.
Oh no!
Look,
Sorry. Yeah, so the last thing that we have said was potatoes stuff. So if Eclipse, you can say once again, what do you think they can do from now on? That would be nice.
Okay. Rewind.
I
Here we
mean,
go.
can we also get an apology for Eclipse from Seth after this?
It's
So
fine, my words are cheap.
I completely deny all
with
of the allegations.
Ukulele, with the ukulele, please.
I completely.
I'm sorry if you felt muted. I want you to know that it was always our full intention to broadcast your audio once we had a setup sufficient to blare it loudly enough to be heard across the entire world. We wanted the impact of your voice to be that strong. And also, fuck you. Like, how dare you?
And also, I'll sue your ass.
Okay, so basically what I said was, maybe in fewer words, he would have to give an itemized list of everything, all the thought processes, why he didn't donate, what was going on. And also he'd have to donate the remainder. I don't know what the remainder is. I don't know how much was actually not. People say there was some undercutting going, not undercutting, what's the word?
Underreporting.
Underreporting going on. That's for the IRS to deal with, or tax people to deal with. I am not a tax man, thank goodness. And then he would have to give a sincere apology, not blame anyone but himself and whoever else was in the team doing it. No, not blame anyone who didn't have direct contact with the stuff.
Right.
And yeah, tell everyone like what happened, why. If it was because the charities were bad, tell us why.
Yeah. Agreed. All great suggestions. Seth, what do you think he should
Yeah,
do? If any?
in my opinion, there is nothing that is going to now make me trust him again. So personally think that, yeah, everything that Eclipse and Potato mentioned before, but also I think he should not be the face of the completionist anymore if he intends on, continuing with that, because he does not seem, I do not trust him anymore. So I personally am not gonna watch videos with him in it, because I'm always gonna be wondering, like, is this true or is he just like lying? Yeah. Like, is he actually now playing these video games, or does he have an army of people behind him that is doing that for him?
He definitely doesn't have that anymore.
Yeah, so it's just like I don't see him as a trustworthy person anymore, so I think he should cut his losses, and that's pretty much it. Use what he has and invest somewhere else, because that's it. What about you?
Is me dying to Millennia 30 times in 5 minutes?
What about you, Brady?
So I want to preface my comments by sharing with our audience what he has actually done. Gerard, to the best of my knowledge, immediately moved to lock down all of his social media platforms, including the official completionist Reddit and Discord. He introduced an innumerable number of terms to, like, effectively a blacklist. Anything related to the charity, anything related to fraud or crimes or anything like that cannot post comments that last, which contain those terms. He's been trying to sanitize his presence as much as he possibly could, while leaving the horrendous non-apology live. He went quiet for a couple of weeks, and then resurfaced with a video where he begins with what feels like a slightly more sincere but very short apology, basically saying, I understand some people were hurt and kind of betrayed by all this, and I promise I'm going to work as hard as I can to win back your trust, if we can. Anyway, let's talk about Super Mario RPG. And then he just goes right back into his regular spiel, except as of the past month, he's been releasing episodes of The Completionist, which have largely been created entirely on his own for the first time in many, many, many years, as he cut ties with his former partners and good friends, like Alex Fasciani from the Decks and Brett Bayonne, who ran his Let's Play channel with him, and are now running that channel entirely on their own. He lost, apparently, or let go, his entire staff of tech people, editors, writers, because yes, The Completionist did have writers as it went on, which is one reason why the episodes started to feel more and more generic, because it was no longer him telling you his experiences. And artists, and it's just like Gerard, there might be like one editor there, and he's got what appears to be a different title card artist, and his response has been to just try to pump out the same exact content without acknowledgement, without pivoting, and while trying to lock down his own channels of interaction with others, which I think is a horrible idea. Here's my prognosis. Like Seth said, I don't think there is any saving The Completionist or Gerard Khalil as brands, unless he is not the principal actor behind the financial misconduct on the Open Hand Foundation. He publicly names whoever or whatever is, and issues a genuine apology to the extent of, guys, I'm so sorry that we handled this so poorly. I didn't have anything to do with, or I wasn't in charge of the money, and I just kind of nodded my head and went along. These people were responsible. I wasn't. I'm so sorry. I'll work hard to try to get your trust back. I just panicked and didn't respond to this well, and I apologize. But he's not gonna do that. So I believe his brand is indelibly damned for one very specific reason. Now, let's revisit some of what we discussed earlier in this episode. JonTron makes comments very openly, very vocally, across a good stretch of time, saying horrible things about a majority of the Earth's population over and over and over and over again. His career doesn't suffer the same hit. Now, you could say there's hard right-wing individuals who agree with him, sure, but here's the other thing. JonTron's online persona was never about being kind. Not even close. So, him being reprehensible, that doesn't damage his brand in the same way. Same for Pro Jared. Pro Jared didn't sell himself to you as a nice guy. He sold himself to you as a funny guy who talked about old RPGs a lot. So, their brands can kind of weather those storms, even if we argue that ethically they should not. Gerard's entire brand was based around kindness, sincerity, and authenticity, and a passion for games and the incredible, diverse, and inclusive community that plays and creates them. And with that being rendered a complete and total facade for someone who, at the very least, is extremely defensive and selfish and kind of petulant, and at worst is actively malicious and fraudulent, I don't think he can rebuild that brand and rebuild that trust because he wasn't selling us content. Unlike the others, he was selling us himself. And that person has been exposed effectively as counterfeit. So I think unless he tries to show us that he was being coerced or manipulated into going along with all this somehow, he's sunk. Like his videos are going to continue receiving declining views, which they have been ever since he's come back. Each video does worse than the previous. He's not gonna have brand deals anymore. He's not gonna have a huge crew anymore. If he's lucky, gonna be able to make enough from Twitch streams and like old archival video content to stay afloat, if humbly so, but he's not coming back. I think his long prophesied final video covering Donkey Kong Country 2 is coming sooner rather than later, unfortunately. But that's where I'm at. So yeah, this was a downer of an episode.
Yeah, yeah, but it needed to be discussed, like as someone that like to call themselves somewhat of commentators on the gaming scene, like things that do affect us as gamers is also worthy discussing, not just video games. So yeah,
and it's worth noting to our friends out there. There are loads of high-quality, positive, and enthusiastic content creators who are very passionate and knowledgeable, whose work you can still find quite easily. Gerard is not the be-all, end-all, and arguably for the past few years, he was not even the best version of himself online. So just find people that speak to you and your hobby, your passion, in a way that you can relate to. There's loads of great content out there. Anybody have any final thoughts or concluding remarks?
I don't think so.
Nah, I think we said everything that needs to be said, except like if you want to know more about the details of the situation, make sure to check out Carl Jobst on YouTube. He is the person that brought this to light and also done fantastic work in researching and showing all the receipts, unlike the Angry Hamburger Man.
And if you want a detailed breakdown of the financials related to the Open Hand Foundation, there's an excellent long-form analysis released by the Gaming Accountant that breaks down exactly what is and is not included in the Foundation's records, line by line, in very approachable, like, everyday language that you should find both interesting and educational.
That was actually fun to watch, mostly because it came out not long after Gerard was like, these accusers are not like professionals in finances.
And a financial expert comes out and says, well, yeah, they weren't totally accurate. It's actually worse than they believed.
Ooh, yeah, that's always worse.
Which is fantastic. But I suppose that, well, anything else? Anything else anybody wants to contribute?
All I kind of want to say here is, yeah, they're not experts in finance, but clearly neither are you.
Right, obviously. So, ladies and gentlemen, we want to thank you for joining us for this unusual, kind of freeform, rambly breakdown of a popular creator's breakdown. And we hope that regardless of your stance on these issues, you found our conversation entertaining and potentially informative. And if it's something you're interested in, you can seek out some more top quality research based videos from the original investigative journalists online. Until then, we will be waiting here in the wings for you to cover another gaming catastrophe or point of interest. based off of some headlines I've seen, you guys might want to expect a Suicide Squad video from us in the next few weeks. Until then, I hope you have a fantastic rest of your day. And do remember that all tips, all bits, all subs, and all proceeds go from you directly into our pockets. Thank you and have a wonderful rest of your day. Bye-bye!
Bye bye.
Bye.
Bye bye.